Dear attendees, thanks for joining us today. Today with us, good friends of us and partners of us, Alan Jimenez from Qualibrate and Polina Kshmarenko, who is part of QATestLab team. The guys from Qualibrate created this solution which helps to work with testing scripts and some testing stuff for those guys who are not QA specialists actually. And Polina is our program manager who is in charge of organizing quality assurance processes in the teams, and who definitely could provide us with some important information about is it possible actually to test without testers and to organize the process without. So now I give short word for Alan and for Polina, who kindly join us today. Guys, you can say hi to attendees and your expectations from the webinar.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you here. Hope you enjoy our webinar and will get a lot of useful information for your business.
Hello everyone, my name is Alan Jimenez. I'm actually a Mexican national, but I live in the Netherlands. And before we start, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join in a very controversial discussion, which I think it deserves a discussion. I think it's important to establish the correct role of the QA tester within software delivery. And I'm very happy to be here. And of course, I would like to thank QATestLab for inviting us into this webinar as a partner. So thank you very much for that. I'm really looking forward to see what the discussion goes.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Thanks, Polina, for joining me today. So let us start from actually our opinion why this topic is relevant. As Alan mentioned, yeah, it led to a really hot discussion and social networks about is it possible to test without testers. Let me summarize something we could tell you before. Sure, it's almost impossible, I can say impossible, to organize QA process without testers. We all should know that, we all should understand it, but our aim was not to make everyone think that we are not professionals, something like that. Yeah, we just wanted to make you think and make you understand that some parts of the process are definitely could change, the approaches to some parts of testing should change, and the big part of why it happens is because of the appearance of some solutions like Qualibrate and similar tools which help for non-technical people to organize the process better even than technical people in some parts of this process. So as for the general idea, we believe that the world changes constantly, and something new comes. The software becomes more complex, the approaches to its development and its testing become more modern, more difficult, and sometimes more require more costs. Yeah, and at this stage, different companies are looking for optimizing those processes, for cost cutting these processes, to speed up the processes and to make it more efficient. And tools and solutions like Qualibrate are actually helpful for that, but definitely the whole QA process at this stage should require the involvement of people, I believe. And the most important how we can get to this idea, and the most important thing is to understand what is quality assurance actually is. Yeah, and as I believe Polina, who has a very good and deep experience in this field, who organizes the teams who are working on different projects, who manages the QA process sometimes by herself, if Polina could provide us with some information about quality assurance process and approach to this, it should be really useful and wonderful. So Polina, please go ahead with this information.
Thank you, Stan. I would like to add that, of course, no, it's impossible testing without testers. And I would like to tell a little bit more, not about testing process. I would like to tell more about organization of quality assurance in software development, products development. in software development and tell a little bit more which role QA engineers play in whole process of development. From our side, I can add that quality assurance process is much more complex than simple searching bugs and defects in software products. Currently, QA engineers became the part of the development team, and they closely interact with all members of software development life cycle, such as developers, project managers, business analysts, writers, database administrators, and clients. QA engineers help to connect everything together and to ensure that each stage will go ahead as planned. Next slide, please. I would like shortly to go through evolution of QA practices and organization. Currently, we can face three software development methodologies such as waterfall, agile, and DevOps. For waterfall, reviewing of requirements and test strategy creation is one of the most important things in a whole development process. In agile, the most common methodology today, communication, sprint planning, and participation in sprints. It's one of the most important roles that QA engineers make and do during whole development process. And about DevOps. DevOps is a new methodology, and it's definitely based on test scenarios because it uses frameworks like test-driven development and behavior-driven development, where test goes before development process. Next slide, please. I just want to take a look for familiar steps for all of methodologies. The steps are same for and doesn't depend from methodology. QA engineers, first of all, review software requirements, mockups. They check in the completeness, consistency, and integrity of requirements. Then QA engineer create a test plan, test strategy. If we are talking about agile, they are planning test strategy for releases or for sprints. Depends from development process. Then the next step for our team is designing test cases and checklists. And finally, testing as it is. It's execution of test cases and performing all necessary testing types that is necessary for different types of products. Also, it could be load testing, security testing if it's required, and automated tests if it's required for products. Also, QA engineers are very important for regression testing in all approach, in all methodology. We are verifying bug fixing and checking is everything okay when new functionality is added. Let's take a look on main steps of QA process in a waterfall. Next slide. Why in waterfall such steps as reviewing of requirements and test plannings are so important? The main thing is in waterfall, the new next step starts when previous step was ending. If requirements are clear enough, we can improve the quality of end product, and we can improve the further development process. If we face mistakes bugs, defects on stage of product requirements, we'll be able to improve it before it goes to development. So in waterfall, reviewing of requirement and creating of documentation and goes parallel with development process. Also in waterfall, test strategy, which created by QA engineers, are also very important because from correct and complete test strategy depends further quality of software products that goes to the end client and market faces products. Next slide, please. I want to talk about role of QA engineer in agile methodology and in agile based processes. QA engineers play very important role in release and sprint planning. We work toughly with development team, with product owners, with project managers, and QA engineers are part of development team and part of agile processes as well. If to talk about our daily work, we also prepare test cases, checklist, we test user stories, we go ahead with user stories, and we make sure everyone in a team that user stories are complete, enough clear, and we break user stories for different tasks, for different test cases, prepare test tasks, and go through these tasks and perform all testing types that necessary for this product, for this project, and so on. Also, regression testing is also performed dependent from QA process, dependent from products, and so on. One important thing for agile process, QA engineers as a part of the team, they provide the latest updates to whole team. They take part in daily meeting, in sprint planning, and they make sure that everything is fine, that everything goes as it planned. And if it's not, we provide updates to team and we fix all these problems at the beginning, not in the end. Thank you. And about our daily work in all methodologies, we can use tools, and different automated tools helps QA engineers to improve their work and to help us to avoid routine work and to pay more attention to quality of products. We can, if QA engineers use tools in their daily work, they can pay more attention to concrete scenarios. They can cover whole products. They can create different scenarios for testing that are performed by tool in future. And with help of tools, QA quality assurance process is more complete. When QA engineers using tools, they organize process, they optimize process, and they create much more ideas for improvement of QA process in general. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Paulina. Really quite impressive scope of information about the approaches. May I return a little back, and ask you about the waterfall and agile and those two methodologies. Which one, according to your experience, according to your opinion, is easier for you, for QA team in general in terms of implementing QA process?
From our perspective, agile methodology is more efficient than waterfall, and the answer is simple. We receive updates regarding the development process and regarding changes in products in development every day. So we can react quickly for any changes and improve our work, just sending the updates that team provided to us and we provide to development team. In this case, also we face mistakes much more earlier than in waterfall methodology, and we can react as soon as possible and avoid any further risks.
Yeah, thank you very much. And talking about those business side of the process, how also according to your practice here, how usually the interaction between your team and the business side of the client or the project takes place, how it looks like?
We have a lot of different projects, a lot of different ways of work, but very often QA engineers works directly with project managers, product owners, and clients, and they act like advocate between product quality and result of the development process. So from time to time, we help business to improve their end products, and we help to make development more complete, more efficient, and to deliver high quality product on the market.
Thank you very much, Polina, for those answers. Yeah, as for the interaction of business side and development team, QA team, I know that sometimes it's difficult for POs or PMs to provide the all important information to make the dev team or testing team to understand the requirements, and sometimes it's when it's possible to create user scenarios, user stories by their own, they do it, and there are solutions which help them to organize part of testing process by themselves as well, being non-technical guys mainly, but more like business vision people. The Qualibrate is such solution. The Qualibrate was created by actually testers here and by the people who are very close to software testing, and as already was mentioned, they don't have in mind to substitute people at all, but they would like to make their life easier and the projects being completed more quicker, better, and cost-effective, and that's why actually they do it, as I believe. Here with us, Alan Jimenez, who is the director and the technical leader of the project, and Alan will be able to provide us with the demo, answer all your questions, which you can write to the chat to the right of your screen. So it shall be quite informative and quite interesting. Alan, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Paulina and Stan, for a very in-depth conversation about QA practices and the role of testers in the delivery of software delivery. So taking your point around how Qualibrate can deliver value into software delivery from a QA perspective, well, first of all, taking a little bit of a step back, as you said, Qualibrate was actually built out of expertise that we have gathered during our consulting experience. We have about 40 plus consultants that are very highly specialized on quality assurance and testing practices. And we actually have gathered a lot of expertise implementing different types of solutions, whether they are industry standard solutions that are commercial, or even we have customers in the likes like of ING or Tommy Hilfiger, which are adopting a digital transformation in which they adopt more digital delivery paradigms like continuous delivery and DevOps. And we also have a lot of experience with open source solutions as well. So that being said, all that experience, what we tried to do with Qualibrate about 4 years ago is that we decided to productize that knowledge. And we came to the conclusion that in order to be able to ensure quality in the delivery of software, we need to make sure that we can elevate the discussion of the team to talk about quality, which is not only testing, but it's about delivering high quality requirements, high quality documentation, and also have a conversation around it. So in order to actually establish the tone of the conversation, I would like to set some things in stone, pretty clear for the people, because again, I think the title of the discussion was rather controversial, but actually there was a purpose for that. I think we wanted to trigger that thinking process for not only testers but also developers, product owners, or even C-level type of people like executive. One of the things that we want to talk about is that we see software quality not the same as software testing. So if we look, for instance, in the past, and we look at delivery processes like waterfall, most of the times testing software happens in a very late stage of the process, but you're really pushing the quality all the way till the end of the delivery. And most of the times there's not really time to actually think about that. So it's very difficult to actually ensure quality in earlier stages of the process. So from our perspective, one of the things that we really want to talk about is that quality should be an inherent attribute throughout the entire full delivery process of software. And this starts from the definition of a requirement or an idea all the way till you deliver that software to your end users. Additionally, and actually going into this point about quality as an inherent attribute throughout this full delivery process, quality should be everyone's concern. This is not a tester role. This is everyone's, let's say, concern. So basically, if you look at the role of testers nowadays, now that we're moving into Agile and more DevOps and continuous delivery, testers are progressively becoming more like quality assurance advocates, or the so-called quality assurance engineers. And now they are able to actually convince their teammates to be able to think about putting the right acceptance criteria on their user stories, for example, right? Making sure that the whole team has a whole conversation about how can we ensure that the software not only passes the test, but also it's fit for purpose. And this is where the connection to business is also very important. Right now, you see testers having a very, very important conversation with product owners, which is how do we make sure that we can deliver that value to our end users in the means of software. So we see a lot of different delivery paradigms like behavioral-driven development, where the business gets more included in that type of discussion, where you define the requirement, but also you try to define as many test scenarios as part of that exercise. So that's a conversation in between testers, developers, and product owners, which is, I think, very valuable conversation to have. And now, in the context of selecting tools, we shared that, first of all, that as a question whether testers can be replaced by tools, it's a very simple answer. The answer is no. Tools will never replace people. As much as we love Qualibrate and as much as we love different software and solutions, the only thing that a tool can do is that it can elevate your own process and it can elevate the skill set of your people. So they are more efficient and they have a much more better conversation around quality. I think from our perspective, from a Qualibrate standpoint, every time we come to customers and they try to purchase our tool, the first question we ask is, does this tool fit your process and your organization? Because if not, then that means that you need some help on organizing your team so you can actually deliver that value to your software. What the tools in the end they help to do is that they can help you achieve that continuous feedback, because you get real-time analytics of how your quality progresses throughout time, and the tools definitely can help on that. And this is actually one of the things that we try to make with Qualibrate. We try to, for business people, for instance, what we try to do for business people like product owners is that we lower the barrier of entry in the case that they do not have technical expertise. We also include them in the definition of test cases. If you think about the software packages or frameworks like Selenium, if you try to give this to a product owner, it will be very difficult for them to actually put together a test because it's just of its technical nature. So what we try to do with Qualibrate is to make it all inclusive. Let's have a quality conversation with the entire team, not only testers, but also with developers and with product owners. And let's make sure that we build a testing framework which is completely focused on ensuring that your software is fit for purpose in a quality perspective. So now I would like to take you through a demonstration of the product. And again, the product is just the means of becoming, or for your team to become more efficient. One of the things that I mentioned quite heavily in the previous 5 minutes is that we do not only take care of testing assets, but we also take care of ensuring that there is a very clear communication around quality. And this goes in the means having proper documentation of your software, proper definition of testing scenarios, whether you want to execute them manually or automatically. And more importantly, whatever you build needs to be used by people. And these people might need to be trained on how the software works. So we also produce training deliverables in one single go. So what I'm going to show you today is that first, I'm going to impersonate a product owner. Let's say that I have no expertise with testing or with, technical expertise on programmatic experience to create a test on Selenium, for instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to record my, let's say, a process in my application under test. And this can be either a web application or some other systems like SAP, Oracle, etc. And I'm going to go and try to record my own use case. And out of a single recording, we can actually use it for automated testing, manual testing in the case you want to run an acceptance cycle, for instance. We can use it for documentation. You see a very clear definition of what your software looks like and what it does. And more importantly, whenever you launch your system into production, you can use the documentation for a virtual training simulation, but also as an interactive training simulation. For the purpose of this demo, because of the time, I'm going to show you how can a product owner can easily create a recording on a web shop, and how can he execute that recording very fast with no technical intervention whatsoever. So one of the things that I'm going to show you as part of the demo, guys, and first of all, Qualibrate is a cloud service. We try to offer the service to our customers via the cloud for many reasons, but more importantly is because we want to accelerate the adoption of the practice of Qualibrate to your teams as fast as we can. So the way this works is that we offer you a subscription, and as soon as you sign into the software, you're basically ready to go. You don't have to install very large software components in your computer in order to start recordings. You just log in, and you're basically ready to start delivering value to your project. So I'm going to log in into Qualibrate, and one of the things that you will notice is that as soon as I log in, I will see my projects, and these are projects that I have access to. And actually, customers normally they have several projects running in parallel, and different projects have different teams of people working on them. So this is also a way for customers to actually separate the content of different software applications, and it's really up to them because you can actually run multiple teams in parallel. So I'm going to log in into my demo project, and one of the first things that you will notice as soon as we open my demo project is that we have a repository. What the repository means is this. This is the place where you will store all that knowledge that your team needs to have in order to ensure that quality conversation around your software. So it's a folder-based type of a structure. So you can actually create this structure yourself. You can actually build some sort of a pattern that resembles your user stories or your epics, or basically the documentation of your process. So for instance, here we have an example of an e-commerce website. In this case, it's going to be Amazon. And as soon as I start drilling down, you can see that I start kind of categorizing my recordings into what we call processes. So if you think about an e-commerce site like Amazon, you can actually manage customers within the platform, you can manage orders, and you can also manage products. This is just a very simplistic representation of how we can capture knowledge within Qualibrate for the team. Again, at the moment, I'm not doing anything in the lines of technical expertise. It's all purely oriented towards your application under test. If I drill down a little bit more into customer management, for example, you can see here that I have some other deliverables that we call flows. These are the actual process recordings. These are, let's say, the sequence of events that you have on your application under test. If I open, for instance, the customer self-onboarding, and if you think about Amazon, you can actually go into Amazon and create your own user, right? So if I go here to my flow sequence, one of the things that you will notice is that we have organized the recording into what we call chapters. So it's actually very easy to understand at the very first glance what this test is actually doing. So first I go to Amazon account, and then I create an account, and then I will go and probably check that my details were entered correctly. So from a testing standpoint, you can also add verification. On each of the chapters, the way we approach this is that we want to make it very visual, especially in the lines of making it simple for technical and non-technical users to be able to understand what a test is about. So each of the chapters contains a sequence of steps that, and we try as much as we can to make the steps as easy to understand as possible. So we do very user-friendly descriptions. Additionally, apart from the step definition, we also record a screenshot, which the user actually went through at the moment of recording. And in the screenshot, we also highlight the specific object or element that the user has interacted with. And you can already imagine that this might be also very useful for a virtual training simulation. So again, if you were to compare this to documenting your process, let's say traditionally with Microsoft Word, it will mean that you have to manually capture all these steps by literally typing into your Word document, and all the screenshots, you need to take them one by one. With Qualibrate, this representation of a test is done very easy with a recording widget that I'm going to show you very shortly. From a testing perspective, again, here you have a test that actually represents what your requirement is, and it's also very easy to understand. And by the way, if you want to run this automatically, we also capture technical information, not in a separate asset, but we do it under the hood. So for instance, if I click here on this step, which is to enter my customer name, and I go here to my automation tab, here you can see that since this is a web application, I know all the details about my HTML, let's say, document, and I know exactly how I can identify these elements so I can inject my customer name. Another thing that we do as part of the recording is that we also parameterize data. This is extremely important for testers because you can record, let's say, a process with one set of data, but maybe you want to execute it with different types of combinations of data, so you can increase your coverage of the test data management. So here under the flow, we have the concept of a data set, which is automatically generated by the recording. And if I go here to the data, you can see that all the parameters basically are maintainable. So this way, you can actually increase, let's say, the coverage of your data of your process. So now, one of the things that I'm going to show you right now is how can we get to this point? How can we generate this in a very easy way? And again, I'm still impersonating a product owner. Let's say that the tester is not in the room, but I really cannot wait to actually record one of my latest, let's say, user stories that it's in the making. So here, what I can do is that I can, let's say, buy a new book in Amazon. So here, now as a product owner, I have created a new flow, and now I'm ready to start recording my new flow in the browser. So for that, the only thing that the product owner has to do is that we're going to start a recording widget, which is this one that you see on the right side. And one of the things that will stand out from this recording widget is that it's hyper simplified. But we did that for a reason. The reason that we simplify the widget is because we want to make sure that the user focus on what really matters, which is the software application. We don't bring complexity to them. Otherwise, that just deviates attention in actually for them to focus in the actual recording. So here I can type the name of my task. So let's say my chapter, so I can organize my recording in a much more readable way. And as soon as I'm ready, the user automatically goes into the application under test, and they can start recording their process. So in this case, I'm going to look for a book, right? And I'm going to search for it. And one of the things that you will notice, the recorder is already hooked into the browser, and it's actually capturing all the activities that I'm performing. So if I navigate back to the, let's say, to the first step, I navigated to a URL. So you can also change this either here directly if you made a mistake or afterwards in the data set. and then I enter some, let's say, text in the query field for Amazon, and then I hit the go button, right? Now my next chapter is going to be to cart, and again, this is optional. You can actually capture everything in one single chapter, but here I'm going to go and select click on the little prints, and let's imagine that for the purpose of this test, I'm going to do the hardcover, right? And then here you can also change, for instance, I want 3 or 2 books, or maybe 4, right? So we can actually capture this value like this. Okay, so I can select my quantity. Again, I selected 2, but again, this can actually be parameterized later. So in the purpose of my test, maybe I want to buy 20 books and I want to do a verification out of it. But then that I have selected my 2 books, I can add this to cart. Now this is where it becomes interesting for testers, because from a testing standpoint, you don't only want to execute certain steps, but you actually want to add verifications in your process. So here we have the utility to verify things on the application. So if I click verify, everything on the application can be verifiable. So in this case, I want to make sure that I have added my book to the cart. So if I click here on this verification, it automatically adds it into my flow, and you can see that I'm verifying against a certain value. Let's say that I want to do more verifications into my process, so I can go to my cart, right? And here, what you can do is that you can go to the delete button here, and then I want to verify. Let's say that I want to verify this text that has been removed. And again, one of the other things that we provide to the testers is that here you can see that I added a verification that this book was removed, right? But it contains the name of the book. So maybe I don't want the name of the book in the verification string. I only want a portion of it. So what we can do is that we can also do some sort of like a regular expression type of approach. So I can remove the little prints, and I just validate a portion of that specific test. So with the contains operator. So the tester can also do this type of activities. Let's say that I have finalized with my recording just for the purpose of the test, and I can close the browser and I can save it. So now, again, with no technical expertise whatsoever, I was able to record a process, right? And just simply by going through the steps of the process, if you think from a product owner perspective, he might have much better knowledge on how the use case might look like. So we basically just empower them to be able to produce this type of deliverables to the team. So again, we are not trying to replace testers. We're trying to enhance the communication of the team. So, and also to empower non-testers to also be able to add as many use cases as they might think of in order to actually detect more defects as early as possible in the process. So when you deliver your software to production, it meets the quality standards that you might expect. That's basically the whole point about it. Again, just to recap, we have captured a data set. And one of the things that you will notice here is that we captured the little prints text, which is the book name. Or in case of a tester, this might be very useful. You can also add many iterations, so you can also validate different types of combinations of data. So for instance, in my new iteration, on my second iteration, I want to buy a book called A Brief History of Time. And here, I capture and here you can do all sorts of combinations. This is where the testers would be pretty much happy to extend the coverage of the process to cover as many data points as you like. Maybe do all-burst testing, battery testing, etc. So essentially, you are accelerating the way that they create test cases. So that's what we try to do with Qualibrate. We try to enhance the way that they can produce this type of, let's say, deliverables. So how can we use this? So first of all, I have just recorded a process in the simplest way as possible, so non-testers can also do it. And you can use this for either manual testing, automated testing, or training. For the purpose of this conversation, we want to show you how this process, which is one single recording, can also be used for manual test, for automated testing, sorry. So with a very simple click, users can actually execute this automatically. So again, here is where I choose my data set that I just recorded, and I can choose let's say, the iteration that I would like to use for this specific test. And as soon as I start my automated test, it automatically starts executing everything. And all the technical information that is required for this process to execute automatically basically has been taken care of. So again, still, I'm a product owner, not technical expertise whatsoever, and look at what's going on already. So this is essentially the value that we try to deliver to the users.
Yes, thank you very much, Alan. We currently have one question, something I also wanted to ask you, by the way, from Ilya, who asks, what happens if the selections change? Is it possible to use a page object methodology?
So we have many ways to actually accomplish that. If you see here, when I showed you before, every step has a definition of an object, right? And here in the automation tab, you can clearly see how this specific object is recognized. So every time I change the steps, you can see that different objects are associated to that step, right? And here we have the ability to do a combination of attributes, specifically talking about HTML. You use a combination of HTML attributes that will narrow down the search for that object. In the case that the object name has changed, you can actually modify the properties here, right? Or you can also implement, actually in Qualibrate, we have very breakthrough technology to generate unique identifiers for objects using CSS selectors. So we dynamically generate this and we find the best case to identify that object. Or in the case it changes, you can also modify it here directly. So we give that option to the user. You can modify it directly here on the cloud. Or we also have a very cool feature, which is called the runtime maintenance. So let's say that you execute a process, and for whatever reason, an object is not found, then the user at runtime can modify the test. And if it succeeds, it automatically learns the new object properties and remediates the test for you automatically.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, very much. And Ilya, thank you for a really good question. Guys, if, by the way, you have questions, as I mentioned, you can write it to the chat on YouTube. If the question is related to something we are discussing right now, we can answer it quick in the same moment. If it's something general, we'll try to answer all your questions at the end of the webinar. I'm trying to check all the questions right now, and we'll let speakers know if anything is up to be answered right now. Alan, one question from my side at this stage: is it possible to how actually Qualibrate correlates with continuous integration processes? Is it possible to connect these tests to some CI, how it looks like, how it works?
I'm very glad you asked that question, that people asked it, because actually one of the things that I wanted to show as part of the demo is I show you how to easily record a process and how the team can actually execute it directly from Qualibrate. But for us, it's very important that we integrate with other tools, especially continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines. So essentially, Qualibrate has the necessary APIs in order to launch executions from third-party solutions, like, for instance, GitLab, Jenkins, Bamboo, etc. So actually here, I can show you, we have GitLab pipeline management, and I have built a pipeline in which I have introduced a job to, after, let's say, you do a commit of a certain code, you can actually launch and execute a Qualibrate script. So here, for instance, if I go to this specific pipeline, the past, you see that it has one execute job. And if I retry this specific job, you will notice, and actually I can go into the execution of the, if for instance, you can actually run a Qualibrate script directly from the pipeline itself. So this will send an execution to the actual target machine, and that will take care of the execution of the specific, let's say, process, or let's say, or a scenario or test case. So we have full integration with this, and you can actually achieve all sorts of very cool things with it. We see a lot of customers already using this as part of their delivery framework.
Great, thank you for the answer. And some questions from But in this, I guess it's related to Qualibrate, so we can read it right now. Let's say if we already have test cases, is it possible to import it to Qualibrate?
Yes and no, partly. So if you have a full structure of test cases with the step definitions, you can actually load them into Qualibrate automatically. So we can create a structure of processes and flows, and also the steps, I believe. But of course, the information about the technical objects behind the steps are not going to be imported. You actually have to record those. You need to be able to point the recorder to the object, so you can actually have that automated execution type of approach. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. It was a question from Ostap. And we have also a question from Vyacheslav. Is there any integration with Atlassian products like Jira?
So yeah, this goes in the lines also similar to CI/CD. Qualibrate offers an open API, so you can actually integrate with everything that you might like things like Jira. So you can also, let's say, synchronize the status of your tests to your user stories, for instance. We don't have the bespoke integration ready yet, but the API is already available, so we can actually build it. We have an integration with a similar solution called Rike.com. So it's a project management tool where you can actually plan your tests. But when it comes to execution, Qualibrate takes the lead and then it populates back the results into the Rike platform. It's very similar to Jira, but we have the open API in order to achieve that.
Okay, thank you very much. And the question from Nikolai, is there a possibility to select browser version to execute the script in?
We are actually working on that at the moment. So Qualibrate is actually it was launched in 2016, and we have a roadmap that goes all the way till 2021. So we are about to deploy a cloud type of execution platform where you can actually achieve execution on different browser configurations and do it headlessly. So yeah, we are actually planning to launch that somewhere this year.
Thank you. And a question from Marina. How much time it usually takes to understand how to use the tool like yours?
Yeah, that's a very good question. To be honest, because of the simplicity component that we try to do with Qualibrate, is actually one of the most important things that we take into consideration while building the product. We want to make it really ready for non-technical people to be used. So that being said, it allows us to have a learning curve which is very low. And normally it would take between 3 to 4 days to train a person in the full product. And we are talking here about like non-technical people that really have no clue what to do in the context of test automation and process documentation. We have seen very interesting cases with customers. Like for instance, I was recently in New Zealand ramping up a customer which is in the retail sector, and we trained about 5 people which had no experience with test automation whatsoever. And in a period of 3 weeks, they were able to automate about 500 test cases themselves with no support. And during that process, they executed those 500 test cases about 7 different regression cycles during those 4 weeks. I really like to tell this story because it really paints the picture on how accessible these type of solutions can be.
Wow, yeah, that's quite impressive. Thank you for sharing this case. And as I know, you also prepared some information about practical cases when you used it in some particular projects. If you can share this information with us, we'll be glad to listen.
Absolutely. So basically, one of the things that we are very lucky to have worked with all this type of customers. First of all, I like to always talk about the value that we have been able to achieve. And to be honest, when it comes to test automation, realizing customer benefits, if you do it right, you can really achieve very impressive numbers. So for instance, we have customers like Heineken, which we started very small with a project that was targeted to help them release and upgrade to their supplier relationship management platform. And the scope of that project was to automate about 400 processes with Qualibrate. And if we fast forward to today, they have been able to document about 3,500 test cases that they execute in a monthly basis. Usually, only executing 500 test cases took them about 2 to 3 weeks with 5 resources. And with Qualibrate, we managed to bring that up from only 2 resources for 7 hours. So in terms of a business case, it's like a no-brainer. We are able to achieve 90% performance gains on the lead time that it takes for them to execute. What this helped them to do is that it allows them to really focus on increasing the coverage of the tests and also focusing on increasing the coverage of the applications that they test, because they didn't have the bandwidth to test all of these applications that they have. Heineken is a hyper-complex environment of enterprise and non-enterprise systems. And they started with one single system, and now they have a coverage of about 25 different applications and 3,500 processes executed on a monthly basis. So this is one single example, which is Heineken. And other examples like Tommy Hilfiger, for instance, which was our first customer, by the way. We have managed to actually optimize and increase the savings of their use of resources by about 80%. These are hard numbers, and we have, let's say, showcase these to their leadership team, and they were super happy to see that with the investment on solutions such as test automation solutions like ours, they are able to really have a high return of investment on the, let's say, on the projects. So again, I feel very lucky that we have been able to achieve these numbers to our customers, but at the same time, this is our target. We want to make sure that our customers have that conversation. What is the right quality? What is the right coverage that we need to have? And how can we do it as efficiently and as fast as possible? And this is what we try to do with Qualibrate on a daily basis, guys.
Thank you very much for sharing these practical cases. And as I see, we, by the way, have one more question from Nikolai, who asks about script running on browsers and mobile devices, both real devices, virtual devices. It works with Qualibrate currently.
This is also going in the line of the cloud platform, let's say, provisioning system that we're trying to roll out this year. So I cannot wait to give you more updates on that. And if you have more questions around the roadmap, I can also share it with the people that are interested on it, so you can see exactly what type of things we're going to launch. And this is one of the topics that we're going to be working on this year.
Yeah, guys, you'll see the contacts of Alan and of Qualibrate in general in the last slide of the presentation, so you'll be able to write directly your questions. By the way, we have some more questions. Some of them are general ones. Let me read it for you guys. First one was from Nikolai, who asked about the difference between QA automation methods for waterfall and agile projects, in your opinion. I guess it's mainly to Paulina.
Yes, if to talk about test automation in waterfall and agile, there are two main differences between approaches. Because in agile, we are preparing test documentation during a feature or module is developing, and then we automate it as soon as it's ready and add these test cases for further regression testing. In waterfall, we are waiting until complete part of the product will be ready, and only then we start to prepare documentation and to write automation tests for it. So it takes more time, and it's not so efficient because mistake cost much more than in agile.
Thank you, Paulina. And one more question from Vyacheslav. What are special features QA role in Kanban?
If to talk about classic Kanban board, QA engineers are responsible from moving tickets to column done, and they take whole responsibility about quality of product in the end of the development process of whole product or separate features. In Kanban, we can use tools such as Qualibrate tool to automate manual testing and to go deeper and to think about positive and negative scenarios for separate functionality to make sure that everything works fine.
Thanks. Thank you, Polina. There was also a question about from Ilya about practical application of Hurricane syntax as a common language between different roles in the process. I don't know if it's something you could answer. Not really. Okay. Ilya, you feel free to send us this question because it's mainly technical one for our test automation team. The guys will be glad to answer you directly. As for other questions we currently have, the question from Daniel, at what stages of the development process it's better to involve testers?
As our practice shows, it's better to involve QA engineers at the beginning of the development process because in this case we can do this process more complete and improve quality in the end of the process.
Thank you. And the question from Vyacheslav, how to work on requirements with new processes?
How to work with the requirements?
On requirements.
Okay. QA engineers go through requirements not always as a technical person. Sometimes we use user approach to make sure that everything is clear and complete. So as a first step, we just discovering requirements and from our experience, from our perspective, prepare some ideas for improvement for these requirements to make it more clear for further development.
Thank you very much, Polina. And have a question from Nikolai. How you prepare automation test scripts in Agile so fast? I guess, Nikolai, you can... on one of our previous webinars, there was our head of test automation, Ivana, and I believe she'll join us on one of the upcoming webinars, and we'll be just glad to see you there. And if you'll ask this question there, you can have a detailed discussion with her about this because she's familiar with our approaches to test automation in Agile and other methodologies. Polina is mainly manual testing specialist, and as I mentioned, the manager who organizes the process of manual testing team. So I believe for you to receive more efficient and more detailed answer, it will be better to you can write the question directly to QATestLab, or you can write you can wait till the next webinar comes about test automation, and we'll be glad to see you there and answer your question there. Yeah, as for other questions, guys, yeah, also please feel free to send it to Qualibrate and to QATestLab directly or via social networks. You can see the contacts here. And as a short summary, I'll try to summarize what actually we discussed today. Yeah, it's good to understand that at this stage, testing can't be performed without the tester, yeah, without human, because the organization of the process still is on human side. But there are solutions, there are tools which really simplify, speed up the process. The cases which Alan gave us when people really quickly and very fast, cost-effective, and with good results executed some tasks on a new projects, give us the understanding that the world is changes and some solutions are really helpful in terms of simplifying the process organization for the people. So that's what I think in this case, and Alan and Polina will be glad to know your opinion, your summary about what we discussed today as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. So again, very glad that we had this conversation. I think it was good to trigger the topic, and I'm very glad that we created that controversy. But it's pretty simple, right? People in the end are the ones that are going to deliver that quality to the software. But of course, you can elevate it with the right tool set and with the right process. So in case anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate. Very happy to have participated on this webinar, and thanks a lot for everyone for your time.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned, feel free to send us the questions. Polina, want to add something?
Thank you for your time. Thank you for attention. I hope we proved together with Alan that testing is impossible without testers, but tools, such tools as Qualibrate, helps us to provide high quality products on the market.
Thanks, Polina, and one more time, thank you, Alan, for joining us today. Dear attendees, thank you for all the questions. It was really quite interesting discussion, and see you on our next webinars. Bye, guys.
Bye.